In today's episode, we'll be using a bunch of wooden blocks and a hammer. And no, it's not going to be a woodworking project. We are still dealing with vintage electronics, so stay tuned. Oops, how did that get there? Excuse myself. Yum yum yum. One of my recent acquisitions is this IBM AT5170 model. And the reason I got this one is that when I was a student a long time ago, this was our main machine in the school's library, and it used to contain the entire catalog of all the books that we had in inventory. And I used to be the administrator of that library. The program was written in, I believe, QBasic by one of our math professors. And as you can see, the machine looks a little bit beaten up. It has a few problems, like broken and dropped in floppy drives. There's also most, if not all, of the screws missing. As you can see, the case is a little bit banged up. And there are some very funky cables sticking out of this one. So this one is probably going to need a lot of repairs. But before we dive into this model, open it up and see what's in there and what needs to be done, let's try and hook up a keyboard and monitor and see if it actually boots up or not. It does seem to be counting up memory. That seems to be telling me it's got 512 kilobytes of memory installed. That's the default for that machine without any expansion boards. 601 diskette error and 161 system options not set, which I believe indicates there's no battery or the battery is empty. So let's see if the keyboard works and I can indeed resume. And it boots into BASIC. So that to me seems to indicate the machine kind of works. Whatever is in there in terms of media is not able to boot from any of the built-in drives. Well, that's the built-in floppy drives down here. Shouldn't drink that much white wine. Or the potentially built-in hard drive. Or something else with the setup is incorrect. But at least that is a sign of life, and I'm happy about that. So let's turn this off and start taking the machine apart and see what's in there. That's the IBM AT, a 5170 model, I believe. Let's take a quick look around. As you can see, there's quite a bit of case damage where it's been dented in, a lot of scratches, discoloration. Since that is all solid metal, I'm hoping this can easily be banged out, and even if the paint splits off, I do have some replacement paint, so I can, if necessary, sand this whole thing down and repaint it. With the floppy drives seem to be dislodged, so this one is just down there. It might be fixed or not, I have no idea. Since there is a hidden slot down here for another hard drive, for instance, maybe someone put it there on purpose, I don't know. It didn't come with any of the case screws in there, so we'll have to find some replacement. And as you can see here, some of the back pieces are rusted. Again, that should be an easy fix. There's some here by the power supply. I'm hoping it didn't go inside, but we'll take this out and take a good look anyway. And also some rust here on the screws for the graphics card. However, as you saw in the demo earlier, this one still works. And then there's some down here on that screw as well. So overall, not in the best shape, but nothing that can't be fixed, I'm hoping. The weird thing is this big fat cable assembly, which is just hanging out of the back of one of the slots. We'll take a look at the inside in a moment and see what this might be, but this is not a connector that I have seen before, so we'll explore that and see what card that connects to in a moment. Okay, so let's start taking this apart and checking out what's inside. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, all those case screws are missing. So this is as simple as taking it off. That cover, which it looks like there might have been some liquid damage rather than battery damage, causing some rusting back here. This should be easy to remove with a wire brush, hopefully. So let's put this aside and look at what we have inside of the case. Now, as you might remember, when I tried starting this up, it had two error messages. One was related to the CMOS status, so most likely the battery is either dead or maybe even missing entirely, but we'll check that out in a moment. The other one was related to not being able to find a floppy drive, so I couldn't actually boot this into DOS. It booted right into the default basic implementation of the machine, so either the controller is damaged, the cables are missing or not connected properly, the floppy is damaged, it doesn't get any power to the drive, or something else. So let's start with the cards, and I need a screwdriver in order to get those out. I just need to find one. So let's maybe start with this card here, because I already had a look to figure out what it might be. And this is a memory expansion board, and I think it's called an Intel Above board. Which revision? Let's think. Revision B. I believe this supports up to 2 MB of RAM, so I'm thinking this probably has one. I don't know if this is also able to expand the base memory from the built-in 512K to 640 kilobytes. When the computer booted up, it did not count any additional RAM, so I'm not sure if this needs any drivers that need to be loaded after the initial BIOS to make this accessible. I did order some additional chips that hopefully work with this card, so we'll try that out later. Next, and these are not regular Phillips screws, so I'll need a different screwdriver. Let's see what this is. And this looks to be maybe an original IBM, judging by the color of the PCB, but an 8-bit serial parallel interface card, so you have your printer and mouse port here. I have not tested any of this to see if it still works, but it looks to be in good condition. I don't think any of the tantalum capacitors have blown up. If they did before I turned this on for the first time. So these seem okay. This does not want to come out. There we go. Okay, next we have the whatever graphics card this is, and by the looks of it, this is an 8-bit ISA card with some very rusty connectors. I believe this is a CGA card. Color graphics adapter, has an IBM chip 1981 on it. Most of that is probably video RAM, although not a lot, I would assume. I will look up all the model numbers at some point later and put more details in the video about what these things actually are and some of the specs. It doesn't look as if the rust has gone beyond the metal pieces that form the connector, so I can most likely take those off, desolder them, and put new ones on here. None of the traces seem to be damaged, which is good, but I might also just put a newer EGA, maybe even a VGA card into this. It seems to work. In the original test, it produced a picture perfectly fine, so the connector seems okay despite some of that rust. Let's check out this mystery card here, which has these enormous long ribbon cables and, unbeknownst to me, connectors in the back, and try and figure out what this might be. Could have been used as some sort of control machine of industrial, maybe even medical equipment, since I haven't been able to boot from the hard drive, which looks to be an MFN drive. I have really no idea what this was used for before it was decommissioned. This is also an 8-bit ISA card, and we'll see if we can get this out. I might have to take the ribbon cables out first. Careful. Okay. Those people need to stay in. Now I can remove the card and it helpfully suggests that this is the rear of the card. I would have guessed. Static sensitive. Haha. This is an 8-bit ISO card and Factron Schlumberger, made in the USA, and a hand-painted, handwritten serial number. This front, and ooh, don't know if this is just dipped in some sort of paint or a blown capacitor, but this looks a little bit suspicious. I have no idea what this card is, so I will have to look that up and get back to you with the details. And this is a big mess of cables that came with that card. Now we can actually have a closer look at the board, and I'll take you off the tripod for that. So apologies if this becomes a little bit shaky. So here we have the default 512K of RAM. Doesn't look like you can expand that on board, so it needs some expansion card. And here we have the ISO slots, 8 and 16-bit. I'll take out the controller in a moment. It does seem to be in good shape. This is, I believe, where the battery is supposed to go. Here is the keyboard connector, and I see something that might be the battery tucked under here. Usually it is attached to a little Velcro strip here, but that seems to have come loose. You can see a little bit more rust over here by the power supply, which may have come from the battery just leaking this way or maybe even that way. So maybe the case was just stood up on its back pointing upwards. And thankfully it looks like the rest of the board has been spared from those gross battery juices. So let's put you back on the tripod and continue disassembly. And then remove this card. And this seems to be the floppy controller. So there's 2 cables. Nope. Actually, I don't know where these cables go. There is a big fat MFM hard drive here and 2 5¼ inch floppy drives here. Now, as you can see, hopefully over here, let me show you that real quick. Whoops. I'm not surprised I didn't get the floppy to boot from or recognized because there is no data cable connected. So we'll have to see what's up with that. And this seems to be the cable for the hard drive LEDs. Which we'll tuck into here for now. And that's that for this card. Oops, don't want to pull up on where the capacitors are, so careful. Okay, so here we appear to have, this is a 16-bit ISA controller card for the MFM drives only, I believe. I don't think this controls the floppies. And I think I know why the drive does not respond. There is some corrosion here on the edge connector, and on this looks to be a capacitor, potentially an axial one, and there might be damage to some other components as well, so we'll have to clean this and see if that fixes the problem. Now hopefully that does not mean that there's something more wrong with the board over there. Okay. A very interesting setup. There appears to be a second drive under the MFM drive. Nice little dust bunny. This cable, and out we go. Oh, look at this beast. It's a Seagate model ST4038. Fragile, or as the Germans say, zerbrechlich. Fragile, I assume, c'est en français. And I think that this is probably a 10 or 20, 30 megabytes maximum drive. It seems to be in good shape, no leakage anywhere on the PCB. Capacitors look fine, so those are those custom brackets that you need to slide drives into the chassis. Okay, I think now we can get rid of some of this cable salad over here and have another look at what might have happened with the battery, which is hiding under here. And this does not appear to have... okay, there's a little bit of leakage coming out of where the cable is, so chances are this is usually where it goes and attaches. Chances are this has leaked a little bit of the corrosive fluid into the machine, but not overly so. Let's disassemble, unplug this. and take a closer look over here. This, I believe, is where the coprocessor 287 would go. I have no idea what some of those other chips are. I will have to take a look at a schematic. This is where the controller card was, and there doesn't appear to be any other corrosion on the board. So whatever happened, it must have crept into here via the bracket. But the board itself looks fine. Of course, we'll only know once we take this out and examine it a little bit more. So overall, this must be the BIOS here. But this seems to be in good shape so far. It says here 512K system board. Let's take apart the rest of the machine. Okay, so it looks as if the board is mostly in good shape. That is the 286 processor, and I don't know if that is easy to read or not. It's clocked at 10 megahertz. The crystal here is tagged at 16 megahertz, so that should be interesting to figure out how this performs. Typically, the processor will be tagged at half the frequency of the crystal, but this should be 8 and not 10, so we'll see how this performs. Here is space for a coprocessor. I have one on order, not that it's going to be used much in what I'm probably going to do with this. Games. There are no major signs of corrosion, but some signs of the battery having leaked its guts over some of the space, the board, and you can see a little bit here on the edge of the board. And it has also resulted in some of the pins here from that 8-bit expansion slot to be corroded, so we'll be cleaning all of that off with some vinegar. And some of the rust is on these plastic standoffs, but I can take these out, clean them off. And I know that most likely in one of the 16-bit slots there must be some corrosion, so I will probably clean them all with some vinegar. And the reason I suspect that, although I can't see anything immediately, is the controller card. If you look here on the edge connector has some corrosion on it, and then around that capacitor there is also some corrosion where I believe the corrosive liquid has just crept up and caused that damage. So we will be also cleaning this off. I think I have some video footage to show me where this card was, so I will be cleaning at least that expansion slot. Might as well just do all of them. I'm pretty sure this is the reason why this board doesn't function. I have another one on order just in case, but I would be happy if by replacing this capacitor and cleaning it, I'll get it back to life. The other thing that has suffered damage is the power supply, and you can see there's some rust residue here and at the back of the power supply. So there is some here on this corner and down here. Since the power supply still works, I'm assuming this is mostly cosmetic, and I can easily kind of take off the rust and then treat it and put some rust inhibiting lacquer on it to prevent further corrosion. But I will of course have to open this up and see what it looks like inside, because some of the components may be on their way out. I can hear things move around in there that may just be rusty metal flaking off, but there seem to be some capacitors. Here's one close to the area of damage, so I'll have to open this up and see what the inside looks like. Of course, given all of the proprietary screws, They look like talks with a security bit. We'll have to see if I have the necessary bits. And then, of course, the board itself, and I'll have to take you off the camera mount for that. It has some damage here, which is where the battery used to sit. I'm assuming again that this has been stored on its back, so which is why the leakage was confined to this kind of area of the chassis only and didn't creep anywhere this way. So this should be easy to remove, maybe with some wire brushes and sandpaper, and clean up. I might need a bunch more new screws. It doesn't look like most of the damage is structural, which is good. And then I have a floppy, another 5¼ inch floppy drive that I have here to remove and get out of here. It's currently stuck in it, I don't know why. And then at the back there doesn't seem to be any major rust, but I'm pretty sure I will try to take off all of the badges and treat this and spray paint it so it will look like new. Same for the case. I do have a color match spray that hopefully resembles the original color pretty well, and so hopefully when I'm done with this, it will look like new. So here I have the chassis of my 5170 outside, and various bits and pieces, the power supply, bracket covers, another piece of the power supply in the case, and the power switch. And what these things are doing is they're soaking in vinegar. And what I've been doing is I used a spray bottle of vinegar, and I kept like spritzing this on all the affected areas, trying to get as much surface coverage as possible. And after that, I'm gonna use a set of brushes. Some of them are metal brushes, to scrape everything off. Might need a second, even third treatment of vinegar to get everything off. And once, this is mostly to neutralize the battery liquid, but once I have relative confidence that that is gone, I will scrape off as much of the rust as possible and spray paint and treat it against further rust, see what needs to be replaced, and then put it back together. This is probably a good place to stop the video. It's already getting pretty long. In the next part, we'll be looking more at some of the repairs to some of the damaged parts. You can already see here the capacitor has been replaced. The board's been cleaned and is ready to go back into the case. And we'll also get our caveman on, because we do need to put that hammer to good use to fix the case. So I hope you enjoyed the restoration of this IBM 5170 so far. Case repairs and some of the components, more details next. And I think we'll do a third part with the final assembly, putting everything back together and making sure that it all works. So check back in when those episodes are ready. Until then, thank you for watching.